you're doing a great service, especially being younger in this industry, where most of us, I was always the young guy in this industry. At 52 right now, I still am to a degree in the circuit that I have always been in, and it's nice to see people like yourself understanding it. And I think it shouldn't be understated the service you are doing to humanity and to anyone who will listen to you. So I, for one, applaud you, and this is why I am honored to be part of what you're doing. I think that in life, the more things change, the more they stay the same. Um, these may be very dynamic times, but I'm speaking of the role that gold and silver should have in your portfolio.
Hey, what's up, Silver Stackers? Thank you for tuning in. This is Silver Slayer. We have Andy Scheckman with us, our little weekly show we're doing. Both busy people, so the last week or so we haven't been able to make one, but we're here now. And yeah, Andy, what's up? I know you're in Florida. Is everything okay over there now?
Yeah, it's all good. We got lucky in Delray Beach. Literally, I mean, everything was over on the other side of the state, but as it made landfall, you could see the outer bands of it as far as Palm Beach, which is about that's where Mar-a-Lago is. That's about 30 minutes north of where I am. So yeah, we had some tornadoes nearby and some heavy winds and some rain. I didn't know you could get tornadoes in Florida, but you can. And overall, it's nice. So it's all good. The, we got lucky, and while I feel very bad for the people on the other side, on the Gulf side, I could tell you that I feel quite fortunate that we didn't have to live through that. Look, the pictures look pretty horrific.
Yeah, I used to live in Naples, and I know it was near there, Fort Myers, but man, well, I'm glad you're okay and safe. So I had a lot of people ask or send me emails asking questions. I mean, we can get into that in a little bit, but just want to know your idea on right now what the markets are doing and what you think's going on with everything. Is there anything in particular that's standing out? I know actually, we haven't actually. Yeah, I wanted to bring this up. The U.S. Mint, they cut off everyone publicly from purchasing from them. Only a few authorized dealers. I know you're one of them. Do you know what's going on with that? Do you have any inside information?
Well, they called us 6, 8 weeks ago and told us that they were curtailing production of gold by 50% into the second half of the year, and most of at least all the fractional gold eagles, once you sell out of them, you're not going to find any more right now until 2023. And the Eagles and the Buffaloes have, and I talked about this on several podcasts. I said, well, here comes the gold now, in terms of premium. Um, you're not going to find gold eagles for anywhere probably under 8 or 9% over the price of gold, if not more. A year or two ago, and every time prior, you're looking at 4 or 5%. So they're up, almost double in terms of premium. The silver eagles right now are trending towards $15 and $16 over the price of silver. And the U.S. Mint has proven to be ridiculously inefficient, and getting product coming out of there is, I think when what is gone in the marketplace right now, I don't think they're going to have, but maybe one or two more allocations to the distributors for the rest of the year.
Yep.
And that's it. So I think it's probably October, November, and that is it. There used to be bi-weekly, if not weekly. And so these allocations are being cut. So a few at best in terms of what's out there, and it's not looking good for the remainder of the year to see any relief on U.S. Mint premiums.
Yeah, it's almost embarrassing at this point. And it's not even their fault, really. Like, I feel bad almost, because they're not making the law that won't allow the secretary to pay above spot to purchase silver planters from other, uh,
Well, the
dealers.
interesting thing about that, and you're right, you know, uh, in that, Sunshine Mint makes the rounds for the U.S. Mint and for other governments. I want to say South Africa or Australia, or I mean, there's two or three that they produce the rounds for. All of the other mints we've had no problem getting their product, with the exception now of the Britannias because the Queen died. But for the whole year, getting silver rounds from or coins from the UK, the Britannia, Austria, the Philharmonic, South Africa, the Rand, and Australia, the Kangaroo, have not been a problem. And
Right.
the Sunshine Mint refinery, they produce the blanks for some of those mints, and
Yeah.
for whatever reason, the U.S. Mint has just not, um, or the U.S. Treasury has not made it easy for people in this country to get silver. But now they're doing the same thing with gold, which befuddles me because really, um, silver has represented the majority of all the action in this industry for the last 2.5 years. And so gold sales have been anything but robust. You can see premiums on gold for forever, even through all of these elevated silver premiums have been normal to what they've been
Yeah.
for years, even within a bear market. So, the pricing within a bear market where you're seeing there have been times where when silver's flying, no one's buying gold, and the authorized participants have to pay more from the U.S. Mint at 3.25+% to buy the gold than they're selling them for to the industry, and so they're taking a loss right off the bat. No one has been buying gold until the U.S. Mint, in their infinite wisdom, decided to curtail production of gold. Also, so something weird is going on
Yep.
with the U.S. Mint. Not exactly sure who's behind it. If the strings are being pulled from much higher above, I think the mint is incredibly capable. It just seems that they're not being allowed
Yep.
somehow, some way to, as you mentioned, to be as efficient as all of the other five sovereign mints.
Yeah, that's literally my last video I posted today was talking about how something is going on behind the scenes. There's more to the story. I mean, other mints are allowed to pay above spot price to purchase from the Sunshine Mint, so that's why it makes sense that there's no shortage, or it's easily accessible to get these other coins. But like Patrick Heller was saying, the U.S. Mint isn't going to change that law because we're trying to hold down interest rates on our own $30 trillion of debt, and he doesn't, and I don't think that they're gonna change that law either. I mean, I just don't see how the situation is gonna get any better. It could only get worse. And now with gold as well, like gold isn't scarce. That's why there's no premiums. I mean, but it just doesn't make sense with gold now. Like you were saying, something is going. It just doesn't make sense.
The only thing that would make sense, I guess, if you put on your tinfoil hat, would be that when you see gold rising and massive demand for gold, what that means in essence is de-dollarizing. You're selling
Mm,
dollars to buy gold, and it is the canary in the mine shaft. It speaks to the fragility of the system. It speaks to the demand to de-dollarize. And if indeed it's an attempt to forestall a run on dollars, a panic out of dollars into gold, if it's making it that much more difficult to obtain gold from the U.S. Mint, maybe it's in an attempt to forestall or to defer attention away from what is the one place to be in any type of a dollar problem. And so, if you want to be conspiratorial, say that. I mean, look, on the other hand, it's one of the only parts of the government that is profitable. People want it. Why not produce it when all the other governments are, if it not for something maybe borderline nefarious? I hate to
mm,
always have to feel conspiratorial, but
right.
this industry has taught me there's a fine line between conspiracy and reality. I was always up there on the podium at the Sprott conference or the Agora conference or Freedom Fest or wherever I was speaking, and I'd say the markets are manipulated. Look at the AM and the PM fixed. Markets don't behave this way. Look at the positioning of the commercial banks. This is not how markets work, where every single day it comes down as it's entering New York, it's hit. It just doesn't work that way. And, you know, I remember Doug Casey getting up shortly after I spoke saying, precious metals markets aren't manipulated. The traders have their mouths are too big. They couldn't keep that kind of secret. Well, J.P. Morgan, as we all know,
Getting
paid the
caught.
900. Right.
Right.
So there is a fine line between conspiracy and reality, and you have to walk it sometimes and feel kind of, out there. But look, ask yourself, why the hell are they doing this when the rest of the world is offering it? So I guess all I can simply say is maybe there's something bigger at play. Maybe they're trying to keep it for their own stockpile. Don't know.
Mm.
But what I do know is that it has been really expensive to buy silver eagles, and that hasn't stopped. In fact, it's increased. And now we're seeing it in gold eagles, where, again, 9% on gold eagles is not uncommon around the industry right now.
Yeah, when we did our last interview, which by the way, people absolutely loved. That interview has like 80,000 views, like unbelievable, like the the feedback. But what you were saying, a lot of people are starting to almost revert back to Eagles, almost feeling like maybe Eagles would be the best play. I mean, we're going back and forth from Eagles being the most beloved coin to then people turning their back because premiums are so high, and now it's almost like maybe we should actually be. And that's what I was mentioning as well, myself even. Like, that doesn't have to be a brilliant uncirculated eagle, but even a dinged, scratched up, milk spotted eagle, as long as it's backed by U.S. Mint. What do you think about that? I mean, I know you mentioned that before, just like the lady from Texas that purchased $50 million all in, U.S. minted gold and silver. So a lot of people were asking more about that.
Look, man, I think that there comes a time where the benefit that you get is marginalized if it starts to become obscene, like it is with the Silver Eagle, um, not knowing what the future brings. I
Mm,
mean, the lady and my associate Bill Holter would tell you they sleep better at night with American issued coins. Um, and they have their reasons. They believe that
yeah.
if there ever were a confiscation, American coins would be um, immune from that. Maybe they're right. Maybe they're not. I don't know. Look, I own a lot of items that aren't Eagles. I own a lot of Eagles, but I've been a U.S. Mint representative for a long time, long enough to where people didn't even want gold and silver back then. And so, when you could buy silver eagles for, you know, $2.89 or
Yeah.
$3.29 over the price of silver, well, then absolutely. And the ironic thing is that when you look at all of the five counterparts, Britannia, Krugerrand, Philharmonic, um,
Maples.
Brew, and Maple, they've all been about 50 cents higher or lower than the Eagle forever, not $8. When you look at junk silver, dimes and quarters minted prior to 1965, I mean, when I started, the name junk was apropos. I would buy it from wholesalers for under melt value, maybe 10 or 20 cents under melt value. I'd sell it for 10 or 20 cents over
Mm,
because the term junk referred to no premium, just the silver content.
yeah.
And now you won't find it for under $10 over spot. Is that because it's scarce because it hasn't been made since 65? And the people who hold it don't want to go back into dollars, or is it because it's American in origin? Look, I could play devil's advocate and say that the dollar gets to the point where it becomes a pariah. Maybe Lady Liberty isn't so much sought after. Living in this country, maybe it's a benefit. Outside the shores, don't know. Look, I don't know how it all plays out. I'll just simply tell you this. I have a hard time, even as a U.S. Mint reseller, one of only 27 in the world, an honor that in many ways is the crowning achievement of my career. But I still can't recommend in good conscience that people spend $15 over silver to buy a silver eagle when you can buy a kilo bar for three and a quarter over, or a kangaroo or a Krugerrand for five and a quarter over. I mean, those are still elevated. anything I've ever seen. But to see a separation of $9 between the Krugerrand or a kangaroo or a Philharmonic and an eagle is 15 times higher than anything I've ever seen in terms of the difference, which is usually 60 cents. Well, now it's $9. That's 15 times. And I just think that people need to think real hard about going down that road. If in the end it's about number of ounces that really matter.
Yeah, yeah, that's also what I was mentioning. It really does. It breaks down to how you see the market, why you started stacking, is has a lot to do with where you think the world's gonna go. Are you more of a barter, prepper, or are you looking at it for a different reason? Like if you're just looking at ounces, the lowest generics, rounds, 10-ounce bars, stuff, the biggest bang for your buck, which is why a lot of us stack, the intrinsical value where silver offers, as the most highly conductive metal, yada, yada. But now we're looking at investing into, high premium coins and really skipping it really is kind of diverting away from the reason we even started in the first place. And that's like a dilemma I have as well, because it's like the core stacker in me is really kind of it's vanishing, and I don't know really what direction to go right now, to be honest, because it's just a weird place. I always talk about adjusting and adapting, and man, things are weird right now. But someone asked a really, really good question. I wanted to pull it up. Hold on. This guy says, I'm just gonna kind of cut it down. He goes, for what currency, if the dollar does crash, would probably arise? He says you can't just barter with it. So, what would be the best scenario for using it as a store of wealth for anything going forwards? And then he kind of goes into, also given the dollar imploding, would it be a smart move to go with the new back currency from the BRICS nations as it gains speed as a competing valued currency, and trade precious metals through that system instead of the hyperinflated dollar?
Well,
Down.
I get what he's saying. I mean, those are all
Yeah.
fair questions. But if the dollar collapses like that, having access to a BRICS currency is not going to be something very easy to do, nor would it provide much in the
Mm,
way of liquidity. I think that the question is also, is this potential collapse, is this orchestrated? Is this intended? Part of me believes that it is, based upon the idiotic moves of our government and the weaponizing of the dollar and all the things that we are doing to incentivize countries to coalesce against us. And we are incentivizing, you look at the Nord Stream pipeline, 4 explosions in 2 days. Was it us? Was it a false flag by the
mm,
Russians? Who knows? It's man made. That's what they've determined. And so, you know, the decisions that are being made by the leaders of the world are idiotic. I mean, are we pushing ourselves close to nuclear war? Um, when you look at the probability of these BRICS nations moving against the hypocrisy um, and the hegemony of the West that is centuries old, that's the rallying cry that brings them all to the table. The glue is the backing of commodities, of gold and silver and other commodities. That is the glue based upon a distributed ledger. All of that I believe to be true. Don't know what kind of access the West will have to it. The U.S.
mm.
is really what it is all standing up against. I don't know how easy it will be to take part in it, but especially in that scenario. But what I mean by all of this is that if it's intended, the intention is to usher in a new digital backed
Yeah.
US dollar to reset the system and to have a villain to blame, to be able to say we were out because we were wronged by the world. If that happens, if you see some sort of a situation where the dollar is destroyed and what rises from the ashes is a new currency, you have no choice. First and foremost, I mean, either that or leave the country. What are you going to do if that is what the rule of law is? But I will tell you that you will have options holding silver that no one else will, that doesn't. I mean, in that scenario, in that period of time, when there's tremendous uncertainty and no one wants to hold dollars, you will have options when others have none. Those what if questions are very difficult to answer
Yeah.
because no one really knows.
Yeah.
Use your mind's eye and think about it. Okay, it happens. Do you want something that has been valued for 5,000 years, or dollars that no one wants? And, no access to digital accounts because it's worth nothing. No one wants it. You have to have a medium of exchange.
Mm.
And whether or not your mind can take you to the place of how you would utilize it, I'd rather have to figure it out on the come, than not have anything at all that I could even
Yeah.
use to get my family food or whatever it may be. I think that's the way. God forbid we come to that. God forbid. But hey, not only that, I mean, it's been wealth for 5,000 years. So that's just assuming the worst. There are many ways that this could play out. And having gold and silver at this stage of the game, I think, has never been more important for things just like that.
Yeah, that was a really good answer. When I was making a video earlier today, I was also mentioning the possibility of silver being confiscated, which it's happened with gold time and time again. I don't think that it would be as like the Executive Order 6102 from FDR, coming out and saying, your gold is owned by the Federal Reserve now, turn it in, you'll pay $10,000 or 10 years in prison. But for the reasons we need silver industrially, the industrial aspect as for solar panels and all that, do you think that there could be a time? I mean, mining innovate like where could this silver magically come from? I mean, recycling? I don't really think so. Do you think that something could happen, not even just from a monetary perspective, but industrially, that also could play a huge part? Because it feels like something big is about to happen. From making videos since 2015, I feel like right now more than ever, it feels like something big is going to happen, either monetarily or industrially. And I like to look at the industrial side. So what do you think about that part?
Well, there's no question that it's a growing and expansive industrial footprint. Silver is needed copiously. There's 500 ounces of silver in the tip of every Tomahawk cruise missile. It's needed as a strategic metal. I've given this a lot of thought actually over the years. What better way to do this than to have your cake and eat it too? Um, and that's what I think has been set up potentially here again, skating the fine line between conspiracy and reality. Let me explain. Um, the largest silver trust in the world is SLV, and it might be the single largest stockpile of silver, if not maybe number two, um, that is administered by a company who just paid $920 million fine for suppressing the metals market, whose head trader, Michael Nowak, is soon to be sentenced along
Yep.
with two other traders
Prison, right?
in prison. And yet, this company, which in many ways people think is an extension of the Federal Reserve, um, is allowed to maintain the custodianship of SLV. Um, we talk about the fox guarding the henhouse. Um, just for the sake of argument, HSBC Bank, who's paid billions and billions and billions in fines, including laundering drug money, is a custodian of GLD. These are the banks that suppress the market. Um, what better way than to create funds that for years and years have been siphoning all of the money from investors around the United States, where you know people have brokerage accounts, and instead of understanding how to buy physical metal, they buy GLD and SLD because their broker tells them to do that. Because brokers nowadays, they're called money managers, even though when I started in this industry, they were called stockbrokers, and they made money on each trade instead of now where you make it by keeping it under management. And that was done because of the internet, which said, I'll do trades for you for $9. Scott Trade said that. And that killed the stockbroker model. So they all became financial advisors. Some of them are great. I don't want to cast a wide shadow on financial advisories, but others know more and more about less and less till they know everything about nothing. And when you ask them, how can I have exposure to gold or silver? They'll tell you to buy GLD or SLD. They won't tell you to take money out from under management and go buy metal from a company like Miles Franklin. That wouldn't do them any good because that's money that they won't make anymore. That's just human nature. Okay. So calling it what it is, objectivity is difficult, I think, in that scenario. So you have all of this money that would pour in through 401ks and um, IRAs and mutual funds and even hedge funds, and all of this money goes into SLV, which is being held by JP Morgan. So on a Friday night, you might have $1 million in SLV and $1 million in GLD. And by the way, only the authorized participants, that being like the commercial banks that fund it, are allowed to withdraw the metal. You and I aren't ever. So on a Friday night, you see on the evening news that SLV and GLD have been nationalized, um, and you have $2 million in your money market Monday morning instead of $1 million in each account. And they look at the world with their palms facing the sky and say that, they being, let's say, the press secretary for the president, says, look, we didn't do anything here. We didn't activate eminent domain. We didn't infringe any civil liberties or break any laws. Um, the U.S. government is going to take this metal. We paid everyone what their share price is worth. Maybe we even gave them a little kicker. You can still go buy physical metal right now in the United States. We're not making metal ownership illegal. All we're doing is what the prospectus gives us the right to do. And so they could be sitting on the largest stockpile of silver and the fourth or fifth largest stockpile of gold in the world and have their cake and eat it too. People can't take possession of it anyway. You want it, go buy it. We're not making it illegal. We're closing two funds. And if the metal really is there, the way they say it is, well, there's a much easier way to confiscate than go door to door to people who, most of which believe in God and guns and are less patriotic than they were 100 years ago, nearly when gold was last confiscated in 1933, 90 years ago or whatever. So,
Yeah.
I think confiscation of gold, if it were to happen, or silver, if our creditors feared nationalization of assets that way, Venezuelan style, taking it from the people, no one would ever trust us again. And we're already, I think, lean on trust these days. So I don't look at it as big of a issue as some do. The companies that will tell you to buy numismatics, which I like, but will sell you often overpriced numismatics, will
Yeah.
tell you you must buy numismatics in order to protect yourself from confiscation. Well, you know, I would like to think you hope for the very best and prepare for the worst. And if they come after your gold and silver, we got bigger problems to worry about.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, that's a really good point. Wow. Yeah, man. I also compared a lot to like the Hunt brothers situation. Owning some say they owned up to 77% of the global silver supply, turning all those contracts into physical delivery. I don't know if it's 70. I mean, I've read that it was up to that much,
It was
but
100 million ounces,
yeah,
and that's exactly what they did. And that's really, you know, that's exactly, what Silver Squeeze would be about, in
yeah,
that they noticed there were way more contracts than there were bars behind it.
yep,
And then the exchange changed the laws, changed the rules
yep.
on them.
Silver Rule
So
7.
Right. Well, when you realize that Ted Butler would tell you that JP Morgan has amassed over 1.1 billion ounces off books, basically. Uh, that's 11 times what the Hunt brothers tried to buy. So,
Jeez.
you know, it's a very small market, I'll tell you that much. And the amount of money that's out there could very quickly uh, gobble up all the silver that is available, period, to be purchased. What, a billion ounces in bar form or whatever. And that's, you're not going to find much more than that. Everything that is used these days, we're going to run a deficit this year in mine supply versus demand. So it's getting very lean for sure.
Well, another person asked a price prediction in the next 5 to 7 years. I don't know if you would answer that in dollar terms, since we don't even know if the dollar would last that long. But if it were to, just theoretically, what could you see silver's price in 5 to 7 years?
If you told me that right now gold was 200 or silver was $265, I would say that's fair.
Mm-hmm.
And because that's the current suppressed price of gold divided by seven. We're real close to it. Somewhere in that. I'm doing this off the top of my head, and I think gold's 1650-ish or something. I haven't looked today. I've been very busy all day. So, but you take that price, divide it by seven. What is that? That's the geologic ratio right now. Keith Newmeyer is a friend of mine. He's
Mm-hmm.
told me several times personally, once publicly, and just a few weeks ago in Boca Raton at Rick Rule's symposium, that it is coming out of the ground globally at 7 to 1. And so you take the price of gold and divide it by seven. It can't stay at 88 or 89 to 1 when it's coming out of the ground at 7 to 1. When it is needed so much in industrial applications and desired so much in monetary applications, and it is a depleted asset. For 5,000 years, that ratio was 16 to 1.
Yeah.
Now it's 7 to 1. And that's because it's found in nature in a form called epithermal, which means very near the surface. And so the big deposits were found a long time ago. And so, you're in a situation where you're going to run deficits in supply. You have expansion in uh, uses industrially. You have an asset that is depleting in nature and is distorted in its relationship to gold right now by almost 11 times. So, whether it be its historical relationship to gold, which is 5,000 years old, whether it be its historical price ratio to gold, or any of that stuff, look, that doesn't matter. What matters right now is what is it coming out of the ground at? So the
Mm-hmm.
gold to silver price ratio isn't really as important as is the mining ratio when you put it in context. And so if you have a ratio of almost 90 to 1, but it's coming out of the ground at 7 to 1, you have a problem. And so at some point, mathematics will tell you got to get there. So you take the price of gold, divide it by seven. You put gold at 5,000 an ounce. Bank of America was saying 3,000 by this year or next year. Take 3,000, divide it by seven. What do you get? Almost $400, over $400. It will go higher than people think possible. Um, and
Ted
I
Butler
don't know.
mentioned that before. I remember reading an article where he mentioned that he said, think of any highest price you have for silver and multiply it by 10 or something.
Yeah, you got guys like Big Swear, who I love, who will tell you that it is far more scarce than gold above ground and that there's more gold than there is silver. He thinks that it will go to 1 to 1 or better.
Yeah.
I mean, that's aggressive in my mind, but 7 to 1 doesn't
Yeah.
seem like an uneducated position to take. If that's really what it's coming out of the ground at, and there's not a lot above ground that isn't already encumbered,
Yeah.
it'll go many times what it is right now.
Especially since, coming out of the ground, I've talked about this, 7 or 8 to 1. Plus, that ounce of gold that gets dug up out of the ground is going to stay in circulation for a century, because gold's just a monetary metal used for coins and bars. It gets remelted, re-scrapped, reused into more coins and bars and jewelry. But that ounce of silver that gets dug up out of the ground is thrown away in a couple decades because it's used for solar panels and stuff that gets thrown away in landfills. So it's almost and it's a byproduct. It's found by accident. So like if it comes out around 701, it's almost lower than that when you consider those factors as well. It's shocking. Like to like I don't see how anyone rationally could try to debate that there's another investment that makes more sense than silver. Like, it doesn't make sense. You either have some biased opinion, ego driven that you don't want to admit it, or you're just you're I don't even want to say the word. But yeah,
Well, something I'll tell you. Being objective is one of the things that I think has made me successful. You cannot be successful or maybe you can. You cannot be genuine um, and or transparent if you don't believe your own argument. And I look at what you just said as being gospel. I mean, how can you look at it objectively? An asset that is massively needed, is expanding in need, is has a duality in demand where most assets have one demand. This is monetary and industrial. Both are massively expanding. It's depleting in nature. Its geologic footprint is less than half of what it had been for all of time, and it's being suppressed by a handful of banks that have it under half of its 1980 peak. What other item can you buy at under half of what it cost you in 1980 that is so massively needed that if it all of a sudden all of it disappeared, you know, so too would Tesla and Panasonic,
yeah,
and Apple and Sony and Samsung and
yeah,
solar panels and and on and on and on. So yeah, the argument is fantastic, and I think the new exchanges that will rise maybe in Moscow
mm,
will start to put gold and silver on the map to where they should be, which will break the Western suppression. And I do believe you can only manipulate a market over time by pushing it in the direction it's going. And for a long time, no one wanted gold and silver. For most of my career, which is over 3 decades long, the mainstream has laughed at it. Not so much anymore, but certainly it is not in favor still. Um, and that's because of suppression and rhetoric, negative rhetoric by the media and the mainstream and
yeah,
the powers that be that want to make everyone believe that dollar bills and stocks and bonds and mutual funds and those things that make Wall Street and the big banks wealthy is the way to do things. And to a degree, it's been that way for a while. And but you know, like all good things, they come to an end, and cycles have a beginning and an end. And I think we are beginning the cycle of commodities away from financial instruments, because you can see what has happened to the leverage of these financial instruments and the manipulation of interest rates, the proliferation of derivatives, and all of these ticking time bombs that I think will make people very quickly feel warm and fuzzy about a physical item that is so massively demanded and needed in your hand, when all of the things that we feel wealthy about really are just digits on the screen and can very quickly evaporate in what I think is coming. And I hate to say that, I really do, because I've never sold gold and silver this way. But I think it's coming, and if you choose to ignore it, I think it's at your own peril.
yeah. I try to make videos to reach out to those people that don't even know they have a choice. I mean, if you have a choice, and that's probably going to be the worst part, the people that know about silver and don't buy it compared to the people that don't even know, right? I mean, in 5 years from now, just like the people that look back, oh, I wish I could have bought Bitcoin at $5, whatever. You didn't know about Bitcoin back then, but the people that did know about Bitcoin and didn't buy it at $5, those are the ones that be kicking themselves in the butt. So I try to reach out to people that don't even know about the reality behind the dollar. Don't even know that there's an alternative, which is silver. There's no solution to the problem. There's only alternatives. It's up
And
to
to
those
that
people.
point, there are no guarantees, only probabilities. And
Mm,
I think that's another one to throw into it because, look, the probability of you and I being right in what we're saying is great. No guarantees in anything,
mm,
and in anything in life. And the older you get, the more you'll know that to be true. But nonetheless, speaking in terms of probabilities, yeah, I think you're right, and I think you're doing a great service, especially being younger in this industry, where most of us, I was always the young guy in this industry. At 52 right now, I still am to a degree in the circuit that I have always been in, and it's nice to see people like yourself understanding it. And I think it shouldn't be understated the service you are doing to humanity and to anyone who will listen to you. So I, for one, applaud you, and this is why I am honored to be part of what you're doing. I think that in life, the more things change, the more they stay the same. These may be very dynamic times, but I'm speaking of the role that gold and silver should have in your portfolio. I will never sit here and tell you when someone asks how high should it go or will it go that you buy it to get rich. That is
right.
not the proper way to look at silver. You may you may not like the environment that you find yourselves in at that time. Maybe you do. Probabilities once again. But to me, you own silver and gold because it is wealth that has outlived all of the world's turmoil and chaos for all of time and is still considered immutable wealth. Wealth that was prevalent in biblical times. And it still is. So here again, everything has a cycle, and the more things change, the more they stay the same, ultimately. And I just think that when people ask how high will it go, understand I don't sell it to anyone ever based upon getting wealthy. I
Mm,
sell it to because it is wealth. That is how I look at it. And you own enough of it, you will be wealthy. And I think that's the best way to look at it.
yeah. Yeah, because what are you comparing? I mean, if you are trying to buy silver to get rich, that means you're comparing silver to the dollar. Rich compared to, I mean that no amount of fake money is going to equal something of real value, no matter how many dollars you throw at it.
That's
Yeah.
exactly that's the part people don't quite understand. They look at gold and they say, well, it's down, and it is. It's down considerably from where it was. But you realize against almost every currency on the planet, it's very near its all-time highs. And in some currencies, it probably is because of the strength of the dollar, the inordinate strength of the dollar. And what is so difficult for people to comprehend is that I did this presentation in South Dakota a few weeks ago, and they're all a bunch of stockbrokers. One of the comments was, "What if what you're saying is true, why is the dollar so strong globally?" And it is very true. It is strong globally, but at the same time, it's losing precipitously its purchasing power here. It's strong globally because it is the cleanest shirt in the dirty laundry hamper. It's the prettiest mirror in the slaughterhouse in comparison when you look at the dollar index to the yen and the euro and the Canadian dollar, which are basket cases. So, you have a bunch of horrible currencies. It's the best of the bunch. But anyways, the bottom line is that, you know, you buy silver and gold not to get wealthy, but because it is wealth. And Richard Russell always said, and I know this is very lofty, I'm not saying this to sound elitist or anything along those lines, but I'll never forget, he said, if you have 2,000 ounces of gold, you'll forever be rich in any circumstance. And that always stuck with me. It's a lot. That's a lot of gold. And, in dollar terms right now, it's what, just over $3 million. So certainly $3 million isn't what it was when he was saying that. But that's the point. You don't
Yeah,
buy gold to get wealthy. You own enough of it. You are
yeah.
wealthy.
yeah, that is the point that now it is $3 million, and it wasn't. But yeah, that's wow, that's pretty interesting. Yeah, with my David Morgan interview, which I appreciate you setting up for me. I asked him it's kind of the same question as what do you think silver's true value is, or when do you think it's overpriced, or when will you throw in the towel? And basically, what he said is he doesn't compare it to dollar terms like we're saying, but he said when he says an ounce of gold can buy you a tuxedo, just like it could back in the day. Basically, just talking about the face value versus the intrinsical value nowadays. And then he went into when an ounce of gold can buy you not just the man's tuxedo, the shoes and stuff, but when that ounce of gold could also buy you half of the man's warehouse, is selling that tuxedo, then it might be overpriced. Comparing it in terms of something tangible, physical instead of dollars. I thought that was pretty interesting. To compare what silver's true value, or how to determine if it is overpriced or not. Um, I don't know. That stuck with me because I always use this kind of metaphor. Walking Liberty $half back in the day could get you a gallon of gas, the 50 cents. And nowadays, that same exact Walking Liberty could get you a gallon of gas. Not 50 cents, but you could take that Walking Liberty, walk down to your local coin shop, sell it for $10, and get yourself a couple gallons of gas. That same exact coin could get you back in the day what it can today. And to look at it that way, I think really helps me understand the
Well,
intrinsic.
let me lay it out another way with gold, kind of similar to what David said. You go back to 1900 and you have a $20 gold piece in your pocket. $20 gold piece is more or less an ounce of gold. It's 0.9675 of an ounce. It's a hair under an ounce. Um, in 1900, that $20 coin would have bought you the suit, the shoes, the tie, the overcoat, the top hat, everything David's talking about.
Hmm.
And here you are, 122 years later, and that $20 bill, which this was $20 back then, $20 bill won't even buy you anything. Won't buy you the tie. Might that's it. Not even. It's hard to find a tie for $20. So, um, but the ounce of gold that the coin is, the intrinsic value, at 18, 16, 17, 1800 bucks, what's it going to buy you? Everything that it bought, that $20 gold coin bought you back then. The dollar value has gotten clobbered, but
Yep.
the value of gold, the underlying value, has maintained your purchasing power. This
Yep.
is why it is wealth. It's not about getting wealthy. You own enough of it, you will be wealthy because it is wealth. And I mean that. And the same thing is true with silver. So this is why politicians have forever tried to pull it out of the currency. This is why they did that, because it enabled them to with an unbridled uh, passion, create money and create wealth with a keystroke, when gold and silver were the tether to the system. And you see what happens when you pull the money out in 130 years. That $20 is worth nothing, but the ounce of gold is worth exactly what it was back then in purchasing power.
Yeah. Yeah. You ever see a chart of right when we got rid of the gold standard, what happened to the dollar's strength? It's almost it's it's hilarious.
Well, they
Um,
devalued the dollar immediately by
yeah.
40%.
Yeah. Like.
And, and they, in essence, revalued gold is what they did to $35 an ounce. So
Yeah.
it was a
Standard.
way for them to remonetize the loot that they just took, make it worth 40% more. But look at it, look at it even more stark since 1971, when it's been totally cut from gold, and it in a short period of time it's lost 98% of its value. And so it's just crazy. The first Corvette my dad bought in 1973 or 74 was like 2,500 bucks. That same car right now will cost you maybe 3,000 bucks. It was under 5 grand, whatever it was. He's told me this many times. We'll call it 5 grand. That same car right now will cost you 125,000. So the value of the dollar is disintegrating. but gold and silver represent stability in a period of time when it's becoming quite obvious, in my opinion, that the governments will choose, as they always have, inflation over making the real tough decisions. And that's why the bond market, the bond traders, who are the most sophisticated traders, show an inverted yield curve to such massive degree, where you can get more money right now on a 6 month or a 1 year note than you can on a 10 year, and I think even on a 30-year bond. So you loan someone money for 6 months, you should get way less than if you loan it to them for 30 years. Bond traders are saying, nope, the Fed's going to pivot, just like they did in the UK today, where they had to come in and rescue the bond market because the pensions were all blowing up and because rates were rising. Well, that just said they're going away from QT to more QE. They are ushering in hyperinflation, and the way that all politicians have done. They will not make the tough decisions because the pensions blow up. You're going to have blood in the streets, and that's just the beginning. And that's where we're headed. So this is why rates can't rise so much. This is why the bond market shows an inverted yield curve, that they will continue to inflate the currency away instead of, in essence, blowing up the economy.
Wow. All right. Well, I think that is a good kind of ending point. Um, I mean, wow, I really enjoyed this conversation. Really good stuff.
We'll
And I
look
hope
forward to
that,
doing it next week.
yeah, yeah. And also, guys, if you wanted to purchase from Miles Franklin, send an email to info@milesfranklin.com. Let them know Silver Slayer sent you. I know Andy would love to hear it. And I know the website will be up shortly. Just hang on. Emailing them is just as easy, but
I hate having to always say that because I've been promising the public for a while. We've had nothing but problem after problem. Had to
yeah,
switch developers, and now we're making such great progress. And an update to the operating system or whatever. This is all above my uh, pay grade. Did something and blew up other parts of the site, and so we had to pivot. And it's getting close. That's all I can tell you. And
yeah.
I thought it would have been up and running by now, but we're getting very, very, very close. I've been assured of that. I do appreciate your listeners sending to email to info@Miles Franklin. Definitely say the Silver Slayer sent me. Ask any questions. We'll send you an updated price sheet, and we will do our very, very, very best to make it a great transaction for your people,
Mm, yeah, I appreciate that.
and
Yep.
at the best prices, hopefully in the entire industry.
I appreciate that. Appreciate that. Well, I guess I'll see you next week. I hope everyone enjoyed this episode. If you have any more questions you wanted me to ask Andy, just send an email to info.silverslayer@gmail, and maybe next week I'll throw those at him as well. All right, Andy, I'll see you. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. This was Silver Slayer. I'll see you guys soon. Peace.